Just quickly, this is the last episode for the year, other than the one that I'm going to be launching on Christmas Day. Enjoy and have a great Merry Christmas and a fantastic New Year. We'll see you bright-eyed, bushy tail at the start of February 2023. G'day and welcome back to Australia's best classic mini YouTube channel. On this episode, we're going to get back working on Grace and fix all the things that went wrong at the Rylstone Classic 2022. Now, for those of you who haven't seen it, the link is in the description above me. Now, the car did make it, so there's no hassles about that or the drivability of it. It was just the way the suspension was handling in some of the really poor roads that we encountered. We did try and stop and adjust the suspension right high, but sadly the cones and the high-lows were just seized in there and we're unable to get any sort of adjustment out of it. So what we need to do is jack up the car, probably remove the top control arm, pull the rubber coat out along with the high-low adjuster, try and free it up, and hopefully we can re-grease it and reset the ride height of it. If not, we might need to replace the high-low cone itself. So let's see how we go, but whilst I jack it up and take the wheels off, let's roll the intro. Alright, so I just had a quick little costume change because the old jumper was getting a little bit too hot. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to go through and have a look at this. You're probably looking at all this going, what the hell are all these numbers and letters and digits and everything here? So essentially this is HTG, which stands for hub to guard. Now, when you are measuring a ride height of a vehicle, it doesn't matter whether it be a four-wheel drive, it doesn't matter whether it be a classic mini, a Valiant, a bloody Lamborghini, whatever. The manufacturer will specify what the hub to guard ratio is to know how high the car is from stock. So why this is important is to make sure that you can get it within the legal parameters. For instance, a four-wheel drive or any vehicle in that fact can be lifted 2 inches with a suspension lift. Any higher than that, that's when you can get defected here in New South Wales, Sydney, Australia. Some countries and some states you can go as high or as little as you want with little to no ramifications. So essentially you are measuring from the center of the hub, so just here where the nut is, all the way to the guard. Now you want to do this measurement twice. You want to do it when it is on the vehicle, when it is on the ground should I say, and when it is in the air. So when you measure it when it's on the ground, that's going to give you the standard ride height. When it is in the air, that's going to give you the droop. So the droop is the suspension under full travel. So it's not going to travel any further than that when it is off the ground. So that's going to give you a droop. So what we are looking at here is hub to guard. So we are looking at front left and front right. Now, as you can see, they are both even 270 mil, so 270 millimeters from hub to guard. Now, the standard mini at the front is 320, so we are 50 mil, so we are 2 inches lower than what it should be standard. As for the rear left and the rear right, they're both at 280. I have absolutely fluked this because I've literally done it by eyesight. So the rear needs to be at 330 left and right. So what we might actually do is bring the front up to about 300, and then the rear we will probably bring it up to about 310, I reckon. That way we're still going to get the added benefit of having it as a low vehicle and handling, but also it's not going to be super high compared to a standard mini. So let's jump to it. Let's see if we can pull the front upper control arms out and then hopefully, fingers crossed, adjust the cones, free it up, and then redo our suspension measurement. So let's jump to it. All right, so first thing first, we're going to remove the shock absorber. So instead of taking it off from the top, we're just going to undo it from the bottom. So undo this bolt and the nut, pull the bolt all the way out. Then we're then going to remove the upper control arm ball joint, and then the pin that goes all the way through, pull the arm out, and then we can adjust, hopefully, this side a lot easier compared to the passenger side. Now, as one of my subscribers said to me not long ago on a previous video, that fitting the front suspension to a subframe is much easier done outside the car than what it is on the inside. So as you can see here, in order for me to get this top pin out that's just sitting down here, I need to remove the brake valve, or the brake switch, should I say, and then pretty much the entire assembly at the front here, just to be able to get that pin out all the way, because at the moment it's hitting on this T-piece just down here. So let's work on getting that out, and then hopefully we can get the arm out and inspect it. All right, so now that I've got the brake switch out, this is now loose enough for us to lift up, and then hopefully be able to pull this pin out through here. So let's give it a little bit of a tug and see what she does. Gotta love the amount of room on a Classic Mini, that you're able to have all these fun things to do and not be able to do. All right, there we go. She's coming out nice and easy. All right, so we pull that pin all the way out just down here. I'm just gonna leave this torch on for now just so you can see, but everything's out. There is a banjo washer, so that brass one that's just down there on both the top and bottom side of this fitting. So it's important to make sure that you renew it every time you take it off. That way you can ensure that it seals. We'll leave that pin there, and then we'll come just back down around here. So now we should be in the operative word, once I get the camera sorted in the position that we need, we should be able to remove the top control arm. Okay, so this is when it'll either play the game or it won't. All right, well, that has definitely seen better days here. Oh, that's just the amount of grease that's on there. We might renew both of the seals, one on either end, depending what sort of condition they're in, but they look all right. Definitely going to renew the cup and the boot as well, because I don't know if you saw before, but there is a dirty big split down the side. There we go. That's just going to let dirt and debris in, so we definitely don't want that. Now that'll pull straight out of there. See you later. Now, I remember one of these being an absolute pain in the sphincter to get out and or in. So let's hope that this is going to play the game. I might just try and get a pry bar in there and just remove the trumpet from the cone itself first, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, we can pull them out individually. Now, when I built this, I actually reused the original rubber cones out of there, because I'd read somewhere in a forum, and please someone comment down below, that the original ones are apparently much better than the new ones nowadays. I'm not entirely sure why, but just like anything that's made out of rubber, a pair of shoes for instance, or even tires, rubber is going to deteriorate and it's going to lose its elasticity and everything else that goes with it. So having reused the old ones may not have been the best idea. So it'll be interesting to see how these have held up. This car was manufactured in 1974, so undoubtedly the rubber cones are going to be probably quite hard compared to the newer ones that I've got coming for it from Minisport in South Australia. Now folks, usually this isn't that hard. If you've got the standard cones and trumpets, you'll probably find it'll be a bit easier than this. So as you can see there, this one here is many moons old. I think it's got somewhere on here, or Moulton, I think it might have been. Yeah, Dunlop. So same company that makes bloody tires. All right, so now what I'm going to do is remove the rubber cone from the trumpet, and then when we get the new ones, we can measure them side to side and see how much difference there actually is. But yeah, as you can see, this is older than Jesus himself, so this is going to be fun to remove. All right, so now comes the fun part, removing the cone off the trumpet. Quick drink. Max taste, no sugar. Pepsi Max. No, this episode is not sponsored in any way, shape or form by Pepsi Max. God, it would be if they did, because tell you what, friggin' love the old Pepsi Max. Cheap man's Coke, they say, but it's just as expensive as Coca-Cola. There we go. All right, how's that? She's cactus. So it does have a thread inside here, so you can compress the cones. I haven't actually used the cone compression tool, not on a Classic Mini anyway. If you have, leave it in the comment section below and let me know how good it is, and if it makes this job a lot easier. I guess it probably would, especially if you did have standard suspension, but that's non-adjustable as well, and you really needed to get that the upper control arm out, from the cone. So yeah, let's put that aside, then we can measure that with the new one. I was just looking inside here. This thing is just full of rusty water. Rust anyway. So this is going to be really, really fun to try and free this thing up. When I put it together, John from Mini Kingdom Online said to me, just use heaps of grease and copper paste on the threads to help prevent it getting seized. And I did exactly that. Sadly, I'd say over time, it's probably just had some water in there and it's really just bombarded it. So that's what's going to be super fun. But we hopefully be able to put something in the vise of some sort of description, whether it be the outside here or in here, and really just try to turn it to try and get it to loosen up, because if not, we're going to have to get a new adjuster. All right, so it's not the most ideal place to be leaning on. Oh, there we go. But I'm just grabbing it on the top here to help free it up. So what I'm going to do is just take it all the way out, and then we're going to clean the adjuster itself, so the trumpet, and then clean out, oh, there's a bloody leaf in there, and we're going to clean out the thread as well, and we're just going to re-grease it. I think this time we just grease it with some high temp bearing grease. That thing is so dry, it's friggin' ridiculous. Alright, so hopefully now, without losing all of the crud that was inside there. Oh, look at that. Bloody gold mine in there, that is just friggin' ridiculous. And even the adjuster bolt itself, look at all that rust. Alright, so let's dispose of that. Let's clean up these threads, both the male thread and the female thread. Look at all that. Bit of WD-40 I think in there. Bit of water, we'll clean it out, and then just do the same with this. Clean up as best we can, and then just pound it, absolutely pound it with high temp bearing grease. As you can see, these things cleaned up pretty well. The threads, because they're quite coarse, they didn't really maintain a lot of dirt and debris in there. I wound it in pretty much all the way until it was pretty much all the way through, so there wasn't really a lot of debris and burr in there. So all we're going to do now is just put that in there for a second. I got a bit of high temp bearing grease. We're just going to grab a heap of that, and we're just going to lather this thing, absolutely lather it in grease. So you only want to really be applying grease at the end of the thread, because as it goes in, it's going to push it all the way down. So you don't need to cover the entire thing in grease. Same when you're doing brake calipers as well. Oh, can't even see me there in the camera. As you wind it in, it will push it all the way down. So yeah, just lube it up, push it all the way down in there, and if you want, you can always just add a little bit more as it goes in, but the extra grease isn't going to hurt it. I'm just going to stick a little bit more in at the top, just kind of plug the hole just like that, with a bit of grease. That'll just ensure that nothing will be able to get in there, and that way there's always plenty of grease in there as well. So if I wind it up or wind it down, there's always going to be some left in there. So pretty much right at the very top, I've just filled it right up. That's not going to hurt it whatsoever. All right, so that's one side done. The other side's going to be an absolute nightmare, I reckon, to do it. I'm not sure if I have to drain the radiator or at least pull it out, but we will need to decide what we're going to do moving forward from there. If I've got to drain it, I've got to drain it. There's no two ways about it, which I'm not overly fussed about, so long as we have that adjustment available again. I should be receiving, hopefully tomorrow, the new rubber cones so we can measure those up. I did say earlier on that I did have a subscriber message and say, you know, this job is a lot easier to do when it's outside the car with the subframe on the ground, which 100% I agree on that. A little bit of dicking around getting everything out, but you can do it. So as long as you've got some time and the tools available, you can do this by yourself. All right, so as you can see, there is a lot going on in my toolbox, so I do apologise for that. There are some things in the works, so you'll probably be able to see that in the link in the description above if I haven't already posted it. It is stuff to do with my Hilux, so some really interesting things. Now, we're just going to eyeball this using a tape measure. So I'm going to measure it in mil or millimeters, whatever you want to call it. So everyone who lives in America, I do apologise. This one is approximately 78 mil in height, and this one is, geez Louise, this one's 85 mil. So there's 7 mil difference in height between the original rubber cone and the new one. So this is fully compressed. That's probably the reason why it drives like absolute crap and is super stiff. So good thing we are going to get rid of that. All right, let's go install these in the car, and hopefully going back together is not going to be as hard as what it was pulling it apart. All right, so installation is reverse of removal. So up goes the cone first. Hopefully I haven't destroyed it too much. All right, that'll sit up in there. Now comes the fun bit of getting the trumpet and the ball joint. That actually looks okay. So we're gonna reuse that. Now we're gonna get the upper control arm and refit that at the same time and try and put the pin through at the same time as fitting the upper control arm. Put the trumpet up in there. Oh, that's wound down way too much. So because the trumpet is now too long, I've loosened off the locking nut, and we're just going to wind it all the way to the top to get it right in there. And then we can put the upper control arm in. This is where probably a spring compressor would certainly help, but YOLO, we're going to give this an attempt. What a nightmare of a job. Right. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. All right, so good and bad news. I ended up putting the pin through this top control arm here, all the way through, put the nut and the washer on each side. But the issue I'm running into is I'm unable to lift up the cone high enough. So what that means is the only way that I can get the top control arm in properly with the ball joint is to compress the spring. So I'm going to have to buy the spring compression tool in order to get it up high enough. Now I can see the reason why that they do use these. Considering the old ones had worn so much, that's the old one there, you can see quite simply that these old ones fell pretty much straight in and I could line everything up. The issue is trying to line up the ball joint with this top control arm, and you can just see, I can get it in there, I just cannot get it down far enough. No matter how hard I push or lever up on the control arm, I just can't line up the ball joint in line with here. So I'm going to have to buy that tool to be able to compress the spring. Let's cut it to the next episode. We'll buy the tool, we'll compress the spring, we'll put it in, hopefully get that top control arm in to that top ball joint, and then fingers crossed we'll do the other side, which I'm not even going to bother filming because it's just going to be exactly the same, except I think with the passenger side, or here in Australia anyway, I'm going to have to drain at least the radiator and possibly remove it. I might be able to get away without doing it, but it just depends really. If we just come back around here just quickly, I'll grab my light. Yeah, so the bolt is up in behind there. You can just see the nut there and the bolt as well. So I might even be able to get it out, but the issue is that it still needs to come out all that way. So it needs to come up to, see if I can just get the torch shining here. The bolt needs to come probably to about here. And as you can see, there is a brake line just there as well. And that's the wiring for my thermofan. And that's what I've been speaking about in previous episodes.
especially the episode just up here, I think it is, or this one, whichever. And I have that rigged up to the thermo switch, which is on the back of the radiator, so it's on this side. It actually acts as a drain plug as well, but I drain it from the bottom radiator hose. To do this side, I'm going to have to remove the radiator. It's going to be super easy. As you can see, I have modified this. I have cut it out to suit the radiator fan, but moving forward, the only way you can fit a radiator fan is to remove that grill that sits along here, which I'm sure most Mini enthusiasts know exactly what I'm talking about. So that'll be for another episode. So guys, thanks heaps for watching. It's probably taken a lot longer than what I anticipated to get to this point, but we're going to have to buy that tool. And if you're watching this and you have got the suspension out, so the one behind me, behind that rag, that's the 1275 suspension that we've already built. And it was quite easy, probably because it hasn't been together for a long time, and you know, we had all the right tools, and maybe the adjusters were a little bit shorter than my ones. But regardless, if you're doing old suspension, it'll be all right. New suspension, you probably need to use a tool. So let's get it, and you'll see me right here on another episode of Tomo's Tune-Ups.